live. I'm live. I'm reading The Invisible Way, A Time to Love, A Time to Die by Reshad Feild. This is a book where he describes his journeys to Turkey, and then he was in England again. He's now in England. He's visiting Elizabeth, who he had been advised to meet, and he met John. John is very, very ill, and Elizabeth is an old friend of his, and they are expecting the worst. So I'm here in chapter 14, and I continue where I stopped last time. We told John that Elizabeth had insisted she wanted to come. He smiled then and seemed relieved. "All right," he said, "but I don't want any dramas. I'm feeling fine. So why don't you go out shopping, as you said you would? Then you could get back here for lunch. I have a lot of letters to write, which will keep me busy. Just leave some coffee and biscuits and I'll be fine." By the time we reached the village shop, the news that Fordy was leaving had travelled ahead of us. "How will you manage?" the shopkeeper asked. "If you need any help, you just call me and I'll come down and cook. My husband is out all day and the daughter can mind the shop. Is Mr. John all right?" We reassured her that everything was fine, but there was a look on her face that made me think that perhaps Fordy had said something about her premonition. We brought all the necessary provisions, and she added another of the cheeses that John liked so much. "Don't forget now," she said as we left. "Call me and I'll be there in a few minutes if you need help." We took a small lane on our return to the house. Noor had said that she needed some fresh air, and there was plenty of time before lunch. It was a beautiful day. The hedges were dusted with green buds, but they were just about burst into leaf. Crocuses and daffodils blossomed in the gardens of the cottages that we passed. The hills were speckled white with newly born lambs, and blossoms were just starting to show pink-white on the trees. We stopped and walked through a wood that seemed alive with birdsong, the watery call of the thrush, the thrill of the warblers, and the plaintive cry of the robin. We heard the first cuckoo. Noor did not speak, and we walked silently, hand in hand. The sense of emergency we'd been experiencing seemed foreign and out of place here. At the far end of the wood, there was a view over the valley, beyond where we could just see a small chapel standing alone, less than a mile away. "Look," Noor said. "Let's walk to it. I'd like to sit there for John." She climbed over the gate marking the boundary of the wood and started running through the field ahead of us. "Wait," I called. We collapsed on an oak bench outside of the chapel grounds, completely out of breath. A stream ran just beside the lane leading up to the chapel, which was shaded by an extraordinary yew tree that must have been several hundred years old. Apart from the gentle trickle of the stream and the liquid notes of a wren calling from the hedgerow, there was no sound at all. Noor and I walked quietly through the graveyard behind the church, looking at the stones. Some dated from the early 17th century, but moss and lichen had grown over many, obliterating the names and dates of the persons who were buried there by the passage of centuries. The grounds were beautifully kept, and there were fresh flowers on some of the newer graves. The chapel was entered through a covered porch surmounted by Gothic arches made of huge oak timbers. There were notices pinned on a board in front of the door, and underneath was a small offertory box towards the upkeep of the building. One of the notices described the history of the chapel, which dated back to the 12th century, and told the story of a monk who had lived in a hut behind the present site, where there was a sacred well. The waters were holy. People from all over Wales had come to drink it and carried it back for the sick. This place reminds me of the chapel at Ephesus, Noor said. It's got the same feeling of peace and stillness, and I can sense the hundreds of pilgrims who have come here over the centuries. Look, I hadn't noticed before. It's dedicated to Mary, she said, pointing to the sign above the door. I feel like I am in two places at once. Do you feel it? It was true. There was an extraordinary sense of completion present. The sense of woman complete, as presented by the Virgin Mary, the perfect matrix. I took Noor's hand once we entered the chapel. Inside, it was perfectly plain, whitewashed walls, rough oak benches, and an altar with a simple brass cross. Nothing distracted from the perfection of the design of the building and the gentle grace that swept through us. Noor walked quietly to the front and knelt by the altar rails. I sat on a bench where we had been standing. My mind wandered back over my own life, watching scenes unfold in the deepening silence. I saw myself as a child, playing in the woods and the open fields. I remembered how free I felt then. I looked back over the days of city life, when I had been a stockbroker, and then a hard-bitten advertising executive, until something had awakened me, and I had started on the long search for some meaning in life. There was a journey round the world, looking for answers in Japan, in the ashrams in India, in the northern Himalayas above Pakistan, until the day I had met my teacher in an antique shop in London, which led me to Turkey and the world of the dervishes. It seemed almost incongruous in this tiny church. It was as though I had returned to the point where the journey started, or else I had never left. Memories flooded in, and I allowed myself to be drawn into all the sensations that we experience: joy, sadness, bitterness, and grief. I prayed that the memories would be dissolved and that only what was useful would remain as part of the pattern of my life. I don't know whether I actually went to sleep, but I lost all sense of time. It was Noor who brought me back. Look at the time. We have been here for ages. We're going to be terribly late. Hurry, she said, slipping her arm through mine. Let's take some water back for John. The well had a low stone wall around it, and someone had left glass bottles beside it. We filled one and ran back across the field to the car. Oh, I hope it's all right. I don't know what happened to us. Quick, let's go, she said. I thought you were never coming back, John said, as we came through the door of the house, our arms piled high with groceries. You said you were only going out for the shopping, and it's been hours. He looked drawn again, but there was no sense of anger in his voice. What have you been doing? I'm sorry, John, I said. It was my fault. Time seemed to slip by. We went for a walk and stopped at an old church. It won't take long to get your lunch, really. I'm very sorry. Don't worry, he said. I'm not hungry, but my dressing needs changing now. I realized he was in pain, and it was the first time that I had seen him in such a state. We had been so stupid to forget his needs so easily. We helped him upstairs to his room, and Noor got the dressing down from the bathroom closet. John did not speak and seemed to be sinking rapidly into a semi-conscious state. Quick, help me, Noor exclaimed as he started to fall forward out of the chair. He was a dead weight, and it took all my strength to hold him. Shall we get the doctor? I asked him, but there was no answer. John, I said, leaning down close to his ear. John, can you hear me? Again there was no answer. By now he was half slumped against the chair. Ring the doctor quickly, Noor. I'll try to move him. No, we'd better not touch him till we get some advice. Let's just cover him with a blanket. I'll hurry. Her voice was tense with concern. She ran down the stairs and I heard her talking to the doctor and the sound of her feet running back up the stairs into the bathroom. She returned with a box of tablets Fordy had told us about. John was still slumped in his chair, his face chalky grey. Hurry, I said to Noor. See if you can get one of them into his mouth. It was impossible. His teeth were clenched tightly. Finally, Noor crushed the tablet and managed to get most of the powder inside his lips. Oh God, is he dying? Noor cried. Help me. Let's try to massage his chest. There was no reaction. His breathing was very low, and there was a rasping sound in his chest. We still had not had time to put on the new dressing, and we both panicked, not knowing what to do. There was the sound of gravel crunching on the drive just then. Noor moved quickly to the door, but there was no need. The doctor hurriedly opened the front door and ran past her up the stairs into John's room. Without a word, he opened his bag, took out a syringe and pulled back John's shirt. Let's pray we're in time, he said. Tell me exactly what happened. We explained that we had stayed out longer than we had intended, that John was upset and in pain when we got back, and that this had happened soon afterwards. The doctor finished the injection, took John's blood pressure and then massaged his chest some more. It looks as though John's had a minor stroke, he said finally. He made me promise never to take him to the hospital. It makes things difficult, but if necessary I can get oxygen sent round. Just then I noticed a slight movement in John's eyes. Very slowly and with great effort he opened them as we moved his head back into an upright position. The colour began to come back into his face. The doctor gave him a second injection and forced another tablet into his mouth. Please go downstairs, he said. I want to be alone with him for a while. I'll call if I need you. We sat on the stone steps outside the front door. Neither of us could speak. I heard the deep tick of the grandfather clock in the hall and the muffled sound of voices from upstairs. The doctor joined us a short time later. Don't worry, he said, he'll be all right, at least for now. We were just in time, another few minutes and he would have been gone. I must go and wash now, and then there are a few things I want to talk to you about. You needn't go upstairs just yet. I've given him a heavy sedative, and it's better that he sleeps. Okay, I make a break here. I hope you have a lovely Saturday, the 3rd of May.